Yeah, so everyone, a warm welcome, and we are going to start our session immediately so that we can catch up. And our apologies that we started a bit late. We were having some technical hitches, but we are glad to welcome all of you, and we're glad that you're here with us this afternoon. So just to set up the context of this session, which is kindly sponsored by Carbon Trust, and we are a big warm thank you to them for enabling us to have this session here today. So looking at the world's population today, 20% of the population has no access to electricity, and that's a whopping 800 million people. And majority of these are in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia, and mostly concentrated in rural communities. And in addition to this, we have 38% of the world's population, that's around 2.6 billion people living without clean cooking energy and technologies. And then that's one side of the coin. The other side is that the efforts to power the world and to have energy is that the sector is one of the greatest contributors to greenhouse warming gases that are responsible for the current crisis that we are currently experiencing. So basically, we need energy, but we also need energy that is safe and that is also not contributing to the greenhouse gases. That's why we're talking about access to clean energy and renewable energy. So definitely we need innovations that are going to deliver clean, affordable energy to help us achieve the Sustainable Development Goal number 7. So this is a map that I got from Medium. It's done by Tiffany, as you can see. He was trying to show how the African continent looks at night. So as you can see, there are quite lots of dark spots, and all the bright spots are in all the big cities in the major in countries that are doing well economically, like South Africa and also Egypt and Algeria and Tunisia. So if you see, like in the middle of South Africa, where we have big countries like DRC, Sudan, Burundi, Chad, it's quite dark. We actually have practically specks of light. So as you can see, Africa is still a long way from getting lit up, having access to electricity, especially in the countries that are least developing. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this brings me to my other question that I'd like to hear from you. Do you think we are on track to achieving Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which is universal access to affordable and clean energy? You can write your comments on the chat. You can on the chat box. You can say yes, we are, or no, we are not, and also give your reasons why we are not on track. It will be nice to hear your feedback, whether you think we are on track or we are not. Next slide, please. Okay, so what will you expect from this session? So the session is designed in 2 parts. So we have part 1, where we will have some welcoming remarks and introduction on Carbon Trust, who are the sponsors of this session. And then after that, we will have a discussion on how decentralized renewable energy can work with utilities for the last mile energy access. And for part 2, we are going to have discussions from companies that Energy Catalyst is supporting, and we'll hear some of the great innovations that they have that are working towards bridging the energy access gap. And then after that, we'll have a plenary chat back, where we will definitely want to hear from the audience. You can ask questions to any of the panelists, and also your feedback and opinions on the presentations that we've had today. So that's basically the overview of the 90 minutes that we are going to be together. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are our wonderful speakers today. As I said, we'll hear from Carbon Trust. We'll also hear on an innovative project that's in Uganda, which is an integrated approach on energy access. We'll hear from Charlene Nagawa. Then we'll also hear from Dr. Faisal Gan. So the first 2 speakers are for part 1, and then the panel discussion that we will have later, we will hear from Dr. Faisal, who is the founder and CEO of SolarisKit. We have Robert Hanna, who is the Director of Sustainable Energy. From Botswana, we have Catherine Bottrill, who is the CEO of Pilio, and then we have Arnold Hennin, the Managing Director of Gromil Power Networks. We will introduce each of them in more detail and also their innovations as we go on. But ladies and gentlemen, this is our exciting lineup of speakers. Next slide, please. Yeah, so without much further ado, I'm going to invite Ian Miga, who is a manager at Carbon Trust. He's going to give us an overview of Carbon Trust. So Ian plays a major role at Carbon Trust in running the company's energy access incubation and acceleration activities, and also leading on the Innovate UK's Energy Catalyst Accelerator. Ian has previously held a number of consultancy roles in Europe and Middle East, focusing on the development of new renewable energy solutions for technology developers, investors, government agencies, and corporates. Then Ian completed his PhD in photovoltaic chemistry, working to commercialize the next generation of thin film PV materials, followed by a postdoctoral research position at the Clean Energy Institute in Seattle. Welcome so much. Welcome, Ian Miga. And so next slide, yes.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes, hello. So my name is Ian Miga from the Carbon Trust in the UK. And so I'm going to start today's session with the introduction to Energy Catalyst, the sponsor of this session. So I work within Energy Catalyst as a program manager. Energy Catalyst, it's a competition that's run by Innovate UK. So for those of you that don't know, Innovate UK is the UK government's innovation funding agency, and the program itself is funded through UK aid. So Energy Catalyst, what is it? It's an innovation program. It's aimed at using new energy solutions to support populations globally that go without modern energy services. So it's a combined grant and accelerator program that looks to provide a combination of financial and advisory support for early stage innovators that have new solutions for addressing energy poverty in Africa and Asia. If you'd just like to skip to the next slide, please, Catherine. So the program has been designed with three main pillars. So the focal point of Energy Catalyst is this open call grant competition that there's been 8 different rounds of the grant funding at the moment, and as well as that, there's a lot of focus on international collaboration within the projects that are funded. So Innovate UK and the delivery partners working on the program do a lot of work to ensure that the projects that are supported have all the necessary local project partners needed to achieve the impact. So they do this through trade missions, through brokerage activities for forming these partnerships. And there's also a program of acceleration support that runs alongside the grant projects to provide access to different sources of expert advisory support to help the innovators that are funded to increase the likelihood of achieving their impact, their development impact, their commercial impact. Next slide, please, Catherine. So since it began the program, it's supported around 350 projects over 7 funding rounds. We're now on the 8th with grant projects underway. That number, the funding figure for slide A is a bit out of date, it changed a bit last year, but there are now a total of 17 projects that are getting up and running in the last 2 or 3 months under round 8. And as well as the merit of their innovation and the impact that innovation can achieve, to be successfully funded through Energy Catalyst, applicants need to demonstrate their impact across 3 other main criteria. So the energy trilemma of sustainability, cost and security of supply, the impact on SDG 7, which, as we all know, the provision of access to energy, as well as the impacts on of the project and the follow-on work on gender equality and social inclusion. So combined impact across all of those 3, and the innovative angle is really how projects are selected for funding through Energy Catalyst. If you'd like to jump on to the next slide, please, Catherine. So to give you a flavour of the types of projects that are funded through the program. And yeah, you'll hear from a few of these companies later in the session. These cover a wide range of different technology and business model areas, tend to be led by the impact rather than a too narrow lens of technology type. The projects can be early, mid or late stage in terms of the technology readiness. And we've seen kind of the types of projects that have been funded over the years generally reflect the kind of the energy access technology needs across the different regions. So you can see from the chart, this means lots of projects in the area of biomass and bioenergy, energy storage, solar technologies, mini grid and smart grid, and as well as productive use of electricity solutions. The next slide shows the regional focus of the program. So a key focus region has been in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. There's been a high number of projects you can see from the gradient of the map, funded in Kenya, in Nigeria, and also in India. More recently, in the latest funding round, round 8, this is kind of expanded in scope to cover Southeast Asia, and yeah, that's really been really exciting to see how some of the technologies and business models can be adapted to the regional country-specific energy access needs in Southeast Asia. So next, so that's a whistle-stop tour, a very quick overview of the Energy Catalyst program. Really looking forward to hearing from some of the exciting projects later on in the discussion. Happy to take any questions, but also aware we're on limited time, so please do feel free to get in touch by email, LinkedIn, or in the chat here. Otherwise, we'll hand over back to Catherine and look forward to the rest of the session.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ian, for that overview of the Energy Catalyst program, which is a program of Carbon Trust and all the exciting innovations that you're supporting, that are at the early stage, or the mid, or the late stage, and which are all geared towards ending energy poverty. Yeah, so as you had said, if anyone has any questions, you can kindly write them in the chat, and we'll strive to create some time so that Ian can respond to that. So thank you so much. And now again, without much further ado, we are going to move to the next session, where we are going to hear from Charlene Nagawa. Charlene is a mini grid design engineer working with Equatorial Power in Uganda. So Equatorial Power is a mini grid developer, and it has projects across sub-Saharan Africa. And the vision is to promote the productive use of energy. Charlene holds a master's degree in sustainable energy and entrepreneurship from the University of Nottingham, UK, and a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Makerere, Kampala. And she's passionate about energy access in rural areas, and her exposure to the industry has led her to realize the gaps that limit the strategies that are being implemented. And therefore, she looks forward to contributing to efforts to mitigate the existing challenges, mentoring young professionals, and also taking on leadership roles. And her goal is to grow technically and commercially as a mini grid design engineer. So thank you so much, Charlene. I'm going to give you a few minutes to talk to us about the work that Carbon Trust is doing in Uganda. And then after that, we will have some question and answer session. So thank you so much. And also for our audience, we had also asked whether to write on the chat whether you feel that we are on track for meeting SDG 7. So kindly continue responding with a yes or a no, and also some of the reasons. So Charlene, welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Yes, thank you everyone for gracing us with your presence. As Catherine introduced me, I'm Charlene Nagawa. I'm a mini grid design engineer at Equatorial Power. Equatorial Power is a mini grid developer in Uganda that cuts across the sub-Saharan Africa with projects around East Africa as well. We implement solar hybrid systems. We implement also clean energy projects, but right now our main focus is solar hybrid systems in the rural and peri-urban areas with a vision to enhance productive use of energy and also promote business incubation with agenda to increase the consumption in these different areas. So that's basically an overview. We are currently working on the Utilities 2.0 project, which I'm going to elaborate more. We are a mini grid developer on the Utilities 2.0 project and also currently doing the operational activities. So maybe if we could go to the next slide and give us an overview of that. So the Utilities 2.0 project is a partnership between the utility in Uganda, which is Umeme, and a mini grid developer, in this case, Equatorial Power. We are currently participating in this. The Utility 2.0 project integrates the national grid with the off-grid to enhance energy access and promote the consumption levels in rural and peri-urban areas. So normally the utilities and the mini grid usually either clash for areas or are not sure which areas to take over. However, this model eliminates that by saying, how can these two entities work together to enhance the energy access across the country? So usually we have maybe the utilities given areas that are 7 to 10 kilometers away from the national grid. Sorry, the mini grid developers given areas which are 7 to 10 kilometers away from the national grid. And then we have the utilities given areas that are within 1 kilometer or up to 2 kilometers away from the national grid, which leaves some of these areas left out, and it slows down the electrification process in the country. So this project allows us to fill that gap, allows us to work together. The mini grid developer comes in, sets up a mini grid in this community, extends to our community then, and then boosts up their consumption habits, leading to the community being commercially viable and economically viable for the grid to be extended. So currently this model is being implemented in a town called Chiumu in Mukono district, central Uganda. It has a 40 kilowatt peak solar PV hybrid plant with battery storage and a diesel generator for backup. It reaches up to 370 customers across a low voltage network of around 5 kilometers. And these customers entail households, businesses, and institutions as well. So Equatorial Power, as a mini grid developer, is doing the technical and operational aspects of this project, as well as the commercial. We are working hand in hand with the utility. To do this, we have customer support agents on site who carry out these activities locally, and then we also remotely monitor the site to ensure sustainability and a reliable product to our beneficiaries. The next slide, please. So as we're all aware from even the graph that Catherine displayed, Uganda still does have one of the lowest electrification rates, and this could be to some of the reasons that are credited to this is because of lack of investments, high wiring costs for the customers, especially in rural areas, high connection costs, and also high operational costs for the utility, and coupled with low consumption habits on the end of the consumers. So this also limits the utility to extend the grid because of low revenues. So as a mini grid developers, we provide solutions for this. As Equatorial Power provide a solution for this, we increase the generational capacity of the country, as well as the energy access. We promote energy access through these off-grid projects. One other thing that we add to these projects through the Utilities 2.0 is through operational activities that are customer-centric. So these customer-centric activities through business incubation and the productive use of energy, they enhance the grid to be extended. They lead to the grid being extended because they lead to consumption growth. If we go to the next slide, I can bring out some of the achievements of the Utility 2.0. Yes, so over time, this project was commissioned in June, on June 30th. It was operational as of 1st of June. And these are some of the growth as the KPIs that we have been able to see over time. In the first weeks of the project, we expected to connect around 370 customers. And within a fortnight, we connected 85% of the target connections. And this could be credited to reduced connection costs through subsidies from one of the stakeholders in the project, which is the government, and also reduced wiring costs through a provision of an aspect of a ready board. So normally, after interaction with some of our customers, their main reason for not paying for the connection was because they didn't have money to wire. So we provided ready boards. Ready board is like a plastic structure. In the slides before, we saw one of our first customers who has a ready board in her house. It provides light to one room and 2 power outlets. So that eliminates a wiring cost for them up until they're able to gain the finances to do complete house wiring, they can still have access to energy. And over this period, over a period of about 6 months, we saw a 66% growth in consumption. Now, this with our monitoring and evaluation team, we have been able to see that it came from business incubation, the business incubation model that we applied to Utility 2.0, and also the customer-centric operations. Understanding and working day-to-day with our customers bridges, it bridges reliability, it bridges trust as well between us and our customers. So we're always pushing them to continue to consume. When we realize they're not consuming, we talk to them and begin to understand what they're lacking so that we can provide for them a better product and see how to work with them. Another indicator of growth in the community over time has been the utilization of a plant. When we sized this plant, we expected that the single phase users, that's the households and businesses and institutions, would consume about 40% of the power that's generated from the plant. And the remaining 60% was to be used by the productive use of energy project. So right now we have a productive use of energy system there. We're working with a company called East African Power. And East African Power is currently implementing a milling pod, which adds value to the maize products from the community. And then the remaining 40% was to be credited to the community. However, over the past months, we have seen a 60% utilization rate just from the households and the businesses, which has been an indicator of growth as well. The businesses have grown. We're working with Enagro as well, an asset financing company that has been working day-to-day with the communities to provide them energy efficient electrical appliances, one that solve their problems to use the energy, to access the energy. And also they don't strain their energy costs because we ensure that these products are actually energy efficient for them. So overall, the project has grown this community, this peri-urban community, and we're looking forward to working with different communities to enhance and accelerate energy access. Thank you for that. I'll now hand over back to Catherine. Just before that, these are some of the images from our site. This is the mini grid plant. It sits on a land of about half an acre. And behind it, that's a community that benefits from this grid. And then we also have a diesel generator, which is backup. It's a 20 kVA, which approximately we have a 98% renewable energy penetration. And we have seen growth over time, which could have reduced the renewable energy penetration as we have to continue to meet the load reliably. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Charlene, for that overview on the project between Equatorial and Umeme, the utility company for Uganda. And yeah, it's exciting to see that the project is achieving and also going beyond the target that it had expected. So one of the first questions that I can ask you would be, what do you think has been the factor behind the success? Why has there been, it has been picked up and also it's working very well between a mini grid and a utility company? So what has been the success between this partnership, and also how did you manage to convince the utility company to partner with you in this initiative?
Yes, thank you for that. So basically, usually when you're calling upon a stakeholder to join you in a certain model or initiative, they have to understand what their potential benefits are. Now, on our end, as a mini grid developer, such a project gains us exposure and experience as well. And the lessons we learn from this model help us to size better for other rural areas and understand different customers based on their consumption habits so that we can give them a good product. Now, on the end of the utility, we have been able to work with Umeme, the current utility in Uganda, because for them, this project is a benefit in terms of research and development. This is something they can look to in the future. They have been able to collect a lot of data, understand their customers, and also improve on how they can gain revenues. Also, our customer-centric model that we present in the Utility 2.0 project, it has boosted the consumption. So now such communities are viable for the grid to be extended. It also lowers the operational cost of the utility because now at least they're getting more revenues from these communities. In addition to this, we have collaborated with the utility through the construction of the low voltage distribution network. Umeme are the subcontractors, and they were also the suppliers for the smart metering system that the customers are currently interacting with. So these benefits also support future extension of the grid. Of course, as the load grows, the mini grid would probably be overly utilized, so that we're looking, future plans are to have the grid come and supply the community in the long run. So because of this, because of Umeme having constructed the distribution network and because of their supply for the smart metering, nothing will change. All they'll have to do is extend the grid and then bring in a transformer and connect the community immediately. So there'll be no change in meters, there'll be no change in network because it's up to standard, which is one of the criteria for future interconnection. So this has been a benefit to the utility. And then with other stakeholders like government, bringing them in with this, for them, it comes with benefits of socioeconomic impact in such communities, capacity growth through job opportunities for these communities, and also it's in line with the electrification plan that the government has and the rural electrification program to increase energy access, to boost consumption per connection over the period. So this project has been beneficial to them. And as well as in terms of taxes, when customers vend and pay for these units, they also gain taxes. So we increase the taxation. So these have been potential benefits for the different stakeholders, and that's how we're able to bring them in.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. I think now we can sample some of the questions that we have from the audience. The first one we can see was, we had Samson from Samson Sakmal Bowling, who wanted to know about the next round of funding from Energy Catalyst. And so we can have Ian just respond that, though he's responded in the chat, but maybe just to explain that so that for the rest of the people can get to.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. I've responded in the chat to Samson's question already,
okay.
So it's in there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Then, so the question from Charlene was, I did not get the relationship between Carbon Trust and the national utility Umeme. This is from Nicholas Marita. I think the project that Charlene was presenting is it's a totally different project from the presentation on the Carbon Trust companies. We'll hear the Carbon Trust companies after this. So at the moment, so we can go to the next question, which was from Teddy Ontario. Could you comment? So this is to Shalina. Could you comment on your experience on sourcing financing for this and other projects? So I think that's a critical question from anyone who wants to engage in such a model. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. So with our experience on sourcing funding for this project, usually the first step is to do a pre-feasibility study on our own as a company. And sourcing financing, you need to have a reliable and sustainable model to be able to get funds from, and we're looking forward to working with other funders, true. And so we're always trying to find ways of building on the previous models to make them more sustainable as we go ahead to understand communities. So usually funders look at the sustainability of the project and its contribution to the SDG 7 affordable clean energy access, which is universal. So in this case, we work hand in hand with communities to ensure that our previous models can justify our next project. So that's why we focus a lot on productive use of energy, which then after through the feasibility study, the productive use of energy project. So for example, here where we have the milling pods, that's also a source of income because the low tariffs are not very profitable. The low electricity tariffs, of course, they're profitable in the sense that the beneficiary has affordable electricity, but for a mini grid developer, that could set them back on how sustainable these models can go. But then with the productive use of energy, we look at ways of making money. Still the productive use of energy hubs are our customers, so they buy electricity from that, but then as well, we make money from them. And so with this, it's easier to source funds and pitch these to investors. So I don't know if that answers most of the question.
Yeah, I think it touches on that. So my question will also be on scaling. What are the plans for Equator, for equatorial power to to enlarge and scale out this project to other regions? And then also, what are some of the challenges that you have experienced so far in this project?
Yes, so as a mini-grid developer, this has been a good project for us because it has helped us understand our other systems better, understand our other sites better. The growth has been tremendous over time. With our experience with other mini-grids, it has been tremendous. So we're looking forward to scaling this up. Now we want to scale this up to 10 to 20 mini-grid sites. We're currently already working on a business model that could extend that. We're in the phase of pre-feasibility studies of these regions. We're in the phase of just developing a platform to have these areas do the energy access. Now we're already working with a utility to identify these areas in hand with the rural electrification program to understand which areas need access to energy, but are maybe 2 to 3 kilometers away from the grid, with a possible extension of the grid in 2 to 3 years. In regards to this, some of the challenges that we have faced under this first prototype, this first implementation in Chiumu, one was the bureaucratic delay on license exemption and permits to go ahead with construction. But the project development phase was also quickened because of our partnership with the utility. So it's more like the mini-grid has a weakness in this area and the utility complements, and then the utility has a weakness in one area, say like sourcing funds or getting investment, and then the mini-grid complements. And then the second challenge, our second challenge has been ideally the technology adoption and funding these technologies, the different technologies. As we advance, the technologies keep changing, true, and also getting the funding for this has also been a challenge, but we're working hard to see that we present the best feasibility studies for this.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. This is a discussion that we can go on and on because it's very interesting, and yeah, you have a lot of experience to share with us. But in the interest of time, we are going to end our first part of this webinar here. And thank you so much, Charlene, for being with us and for sharing with us the experience on Utilities 2.0 project. And also, if there are any other questions in the chat for Charlene, we are going to have her respond on the chat and not this. So thank you so much, Charlene. And now we are going to go to our next session where we have four panel speakers, and these are all companies that have been supported by Carbon Trust, and they've all come up with wonderful innovations that are geared towards accelerating energy access in various countries in Africa. So we are going to jump to our next speaker, and we'll have Robert once he sorts out his connectivity. And our next speaker is Catherine Bottrill. That's my namesake. She's the CEO of Pilio. So Catherine has 20 years of experience working in environmental sustainability. And so Pilio is a spun out of Oxford University in 2011, and it's creating data-driven decision-making tools and services for businesses to meet their commitments towards net zero and a nature-positive future. And so Catherine has worked with businesses across the arts, fashion, education, retail, and the farming sector. And she's leading a project under Innovate UK's Catalyst competition to develop a village inset model that's linking fashion brands and cotton farmers to reduce carbon emissions in the fashion supply chain, while at the same time providing the cotton farming communities with clean and affordable energy. So Catherine holds an MSc in environmental management from Yale University School of the Environment, and in 2016 she was selected as one of the 12 women on the 2016 Angel Academy for Women in Tech, which is supported by the City of London. Congratulations, Catherine. And then also she's an Open Data Institute's 2019 Women Entrepreneur long list. So it's a pleasure to have you, Catherine, and welcome to share with us the innovation on the village inset model. Welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you for being able to join today's panel session. And are you able to take me to the next slide?
Yes.
Yes, so we are just joined into the Energy Catalyst program, and Pilio at the moment works across developing energy analytics and carbon and nature tools for business. And what we've seen in the last couple of years, especially as Catherine mentioned, we've been working in fashion, and increasingly fashion brands are setting themselves science-based targets to reduce their carbon footprint. And part of that is to look into their supply chain, which are described as their scope 3 emissions, which means that they don't directly have control, but they have great influence and interesting partnerships to think about in reducing those emissions. So what we're working towards is developing a solution that supports the fashion brands to achieve their carbon emissions reductions, whilst also supporting the needs of the farming communities that are growing critical natural fiber crops for them. And we're focusing in the first instance on cotton farming, cotton growing communities that are participating in sustainable cotton initiatives like Better Cotton. And our Energy Catalyst program is focused in Pakistan. And I was really interested in, one of the reasons I've been interested to join the Africa Summit is the experience with microgrids, which will come clear in a moment. So Pilio, we're the lead project, and we're really developing the tools to measure and account for these carbon emissions into the supply chain. And we're working with our in-country partner, Himaverte. And Himaverte is extremely kind of knowledgeable and in-depth around energy efficiency, appliances and solar goods in the Pakistan context. And also the founder, Ali Habib, worked and was director of WWF Pakistan for 19 years. So also brought the Better Cotton initiative into Pakistan, which is the largest sustainable cotton program in Pakistan, and it was also world recognized. So I'm also very interested in the relationship because Better Cotton has a strong presence as well in Africa in the cotton growing communities. So Himaverte is our in-country partner, and then WWF works with thousands of cotton growing communities. And in our Energy Catalyst project, we're piloting this with 5 villages to really develop an in-setting model. And then the next partner that we have is LUMS, which is Lahore University of Management Science, and they have developed a microgrid that would serve 15 to 20 homes. So we're focusing on hamlets and cotton growing hamlets and using we're going to be testing 3 microgrids. And then also critically partner in our model is thinking about the microfinance. And so we've partnered with Agahi to really think about how to structure the finance proposition of this. So the in-setting model would both, the first instance is to calculate what the energy needs of the villages are. The second is to understand what the carbon emissions impacts of the fashion brands are, and then almost developing like carbon credits. So for the brands to finance and invest the capital into their cotton growing communities. And if you go to the next slide. And so we have just completed our baseline village assessment. We focused on 15 villages that has now come down to 7 villages, which we did a full energy needs assessment. And now we'll be selecting the 5 villages that this spring will be for the rest of our Energy Catalyst, which will be testing the technology. And in each village, we're setting up what's called an energy darbar. So there will be an enterprise shop that will be providing appliances, solar cooking, solar fans, refrigeration as a service, these microgrid technologies. And we will be adapting it to the specific needs for these 5 villages that we're testing. And we'll be testing out the financing partnerships and also the brands. So we're working and cultivating our relationships to brands in the UK and Europe, and we're a member of Textile Exchange, which is a really valuable network that's looking at all the fashion brands pre-spinning stage, so that we can really co-create and co-design an energy solution that meets both the needs of our villages, but also this fashion needs to reduce their carbon emissions. And then Catherine, if you just go to the last slide. And so this is just to show you the LUMS microgrid solution, which they have running already in a pilot village. And we're working with them to run it in 2 more villages, and then we will be, they've designed the specification for our 3rd microgrid. And what's also really important for us, we are a software solution and a business model. And so we're quite agnostic around the solar solutions that would be homed in our solar shop. So really interested to learn from the partners here on today's call about good technologies and solutions and business models that we could test in a Pakistan context, but our ambition is to that this solution could be replicated in all cotton growing regions in the world. Thank you.
Sorry, I had muted when my phone was making some noise. Yeah, so thank you so much, Catherine, for that wonderful introduction to the village inset model. So my question will be, kindly elaborate how the link with the fashion brands and the fashion farmers, how, where, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we are going to be working with fashion brands that are part of the Better Cotton scheme, also organic cotton scheme. And under that scheme, we're almost like a certification plus module. So as a participant in those schemes, farmers have to do certain reporting, but it doesn't include necessarily some of these energy elements. So we're going to be introducing that data collection through it. So we're linking both in with Better Cotton, which WWF is a delivery partner, and then the brands that are participant in the Better Cotton initiative program. So it gives them more traceability and added value into the program that they're running, because the Better Cotton certification is almost like the tier 1, and our project and solution would enable them to go into tier 2 and really link in with their carbon reductions.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for that explanation. And so right now you're testing the model in 5 villages. And so what's the success so far? What are you learning? And yeah, what are the challenges that you've been experiencing, especially in terms of the business model that you're piloting?
So I think, so we just completed at the end of February the baseline needs assessment. So the first thing is that the response from the villages has been very strong and interested to open up these Darbar enterprises. So we've also been doing the gender equity and social inclusion studies. And so we are ensuring that there will be opportunities for income generation and employment through our social enterprises that will benefit particularly women. And this has been, so far the data that has come through our studies shows that there's a real interest in participating. And then the second part is we've been working, Agahi, the microfinance, is working with us on the kind of almost specification. And that seems that we can design the kind of financial instrument to support the capital for the testing of especially the microgrids. And then IntelliCap has been, because we're part of the accelerator program, and IntelliCap has been doing some work for us to understand the different business models in South Asia around microgrids, because at the moment there's no commercially viable model that exists in Pakistan, but there seems to be some very strong learning in India and Bangladesh, and also be very interested to understand, like the presentation that Charlene gave about what has been successful. But we see that the brands would be putting up the capex to almost fund the infrastructure that would be needed to set up our insetting model in return to get those, and we'll probably follow the gold standard for carbon credits, so that then that investment, they can get the transfer of the carbon credits. And then the villages through the microfinance would pay for the operation and servicing of the infrastructure that we implement into the villages.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for that explanation. And I see we do not have any question in the chat, but if anyone will have any questions for Catherine, kindly write it in the chat, because in the interest of time, we are going to the next speaker. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next slide, please. So our next speaker is Arnold Henin. Arnold is the Managing Director of Gromir Power Networks. This is which is leading work on localized renewable generation, energy storage, and microgrid projects as a trusted, independent, third-party advisor and project developer. He brings more than 12 years of experience in the renewable energy and finance sectors, covering engineering, technical and economic issues, and he's focused on develop customized, appropriate technical options, as well as sustainable business models for deploying renewable energy in microgrids and localized power solutions. So he has led projects in village electrification and commercial and industry systems. He has worked across a range of geographies, including 12 countries across Africa, Europe, and Middle East. And he holds a Bachelor of Engineering degree in Electrical Engineering from McGill University and an MBA from INSEAD. So Arnold, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. And yeah, the floor is yours to let us know about the work that Gromir Power Network is doing in DRC. Welcome.
Thank you, Catherine. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to take part in this event and looking forward to sharing you some of our perspectives on electrification in Congo and specifically our project E Street that we are currently constructing in the city of Bandaka, DRC. Tresta, if we can go to the next slide, I'll give you a bit of a quick overview on E Street. So just a couple of quick notes on the DRC. The DRC is obviously a very large country, the size of Western Europe, and currently has a big infrastructure gap. So outside of the main cities, both energy and other infrastructure is very limited. And so the city of Bandaka, it's about 700 kilometers upstream from Kinshasa on the banks of the Congo River, and actually where another major river, the Ruki, joins the Congo River. It is a city of over 1.2 million people that has not had any utility power supply for the past 6 or 7 years. There was a small network in the center of the city that was operated by the national utility, run off some diesel generators, but the cost of operating that was too high, specifically the fuel costs and logistic challenges. And so that has actually stopped running a number of years ago. So we have a city of over 1 million people that is effectively off grid. So we're not even talking about village or rural electrification. It is actually almost an urban center. And one of the impacts of this is that obviously if you want energy, there are some solar home systems, there are some independent diesel operations, but everyone has to do it themselves. And what that has meant is the growth and economic activity in the city is also severely constrained. So a number of companies have stopped at their operations in Bandaka, and most of the economic activity there is independent, small-scale agriculture, small-scale trading. So a severe constraint on growth and economic activity due to the lack of infrastructure. And if we go to the next slide, so actually here we see our E Street project. It is actually on the main port in Bandaka. So this is in the center of the city. The main port is a large port which is virtually abandoned. There is some warehousing being used by a drinks distributor, but overall, the rest of the port, you have some boats come in and discharge there, but it is virtually abandoned, and there's a number of abandoned buildings on the port, as well as abandoned buildings in the area right behind the port. So we have secured 3 plots of land adjacent to the port to aggregate together into the E Street site. So the E Street approach is, first of all, targeted only at commercial business productive users. It is not supplying the whole city or community. And one, because obviously such a large city, you need a very large system, but also for a couple of reasons. One is to ensure scale and a viable economic model. It also obviously reduces the distribution network and the costs and investment around the distribution network. So we're just we obviously have some distribution on the site, but it's limited to a couple hundred meters, not kilometers across the town. The other nice thing is that we are providing energy to activities that are generating income, so the ability to pay and bankability is stronger. I think two key points around the model. One is achieving scale. A lot of our work on projects in different markets, we've understood that mini grid projects and even commercial industrial projects are challenged by scale. So too small, it's really hard to make those projects economic. For example, in Bandaka, even flying from Kinshasa to Bandaka, which is less than an hour, will typically cost $400 or $500 for a return ticket. So it's extremely expensive. And so those development and installation and operation costs are very significant and will overwhelm a small project. Two other interesting points, I think, on the project. One is that we understood that the clients we're targeting, which are businesses and actually companies primarily that are active in the DRC, in Kinshasa or other markets. Right now, our anchor clients include a large bank, a foundation that's setting up a health clinic, a drinks distributor that will be purchasing ice from us, as well as a bakery that will be establishing the only kind of industrial bakery operations in the whole city, because there's none currently. So the other aspect to these types of businesses is they need more than just energy. And so our offering is more of a bundled multi-service. So the energy is the platform. We add water, so purified drinking water for our customers, because this is also not available. We include security on site and cameras, all that, telecom access, and even logistics support. So it's a bundled service for these businesses to operate in this market. And it's attractive for these businesses because you have a market of over 1 million people that is virtually unserved. Of course, they're very modest, and most of the city is fairly constrained in terms of economic capacity, but on aggregate, there's a lot of, with over 1 million people, there's a lot of economic activity happening on aggregate. I think the other point around that was that really the businesses that are our anchor clients are not there currently. So we're having to work with these businesses to bring them to this community, but that there are businesses that are interested and excited by these types of market opportunities, which is very positive. And already we're also discussing other sites and other cities and large communities across the DRC. And so the need and market potential is clear, I think, to a number of different economic operators that want to access and target these types of markets. So that's kind of the high level overview there. We're also targeting to bring in some local entrepreneurs to provide restaurant shops, and eventually on other sites also looking at agro-processing facilities for the agricultural activities in the area. The system is under construction, and we're targeting to have that operational Q3, Q4 this year.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much, Arnold, for that overview of the e-street bundling approach. And I think that's that should be like one of the very innovative things about this project. How can you say so far that model has been working when you bundle all the services together? Is that one of the driving keys to its success? Yeah,
absolutely. When you speak with some of the operators that have to work in some of these communities by themselves, the cost of setting up even a bank branch is several $100,000, because all of a sudden you want to open a bank, but you have to become an energy operator. You have to provide water, operate all the security. So there's a huge hurdle for companies to go into these markets. And then of course, if you're doing it by yourself, you're operating at a smaller scale. So to operate and most of these operators, if they're going to go, they're going to be using diesel generation, which is extremely expensive. So we will be saving money because we're based obviously on solar. Solar is the main supply with battery, lithium-ion batteries as well. And so we're actually a lower cost than diesel. The diesel price in a place like Bandaka has been $1.40, $1.50. I'm not even sure what it is now with obviously the latest price rises. And in certain places in the DRC, the price is over $2. So it's extremely expensive for diesel. And the base case is that we're going to save money to these. Then on top of it, aggregating with other users allows us to share the cost of security, of telecom access, of bringing this in. The other challenge with diesel is you have to transport it, and the transport is complicated and difficult and unreliable as well. So there's also a supply issue there. We will need to have some diesel backup for us, so we'll have some of those challenges as well. But we will always have a baseline supply from the solar battery throughout the year, even if there's delays in terms of fuel supply or anything else. So yes, bringing in all those, but with the caveat that you have to save your clients money. So make it simpler and save them money.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sure every business person is interested in saving themselves some money, especially in a city and in a challenging countries like DRC, where the infrastructure development is not that high. Yeah. So for anyone who would like to replicate this model, what are some of the lessons that you've learned so far that you would share with them in your journey so far? Yeah. So
I think I mentioned, like, really the economics is the key to the whole thing. And I think for us, scale is very key. In other markets that we're working as well, we're typically targeting at least 100 kilowatt scale to achieve that. Maybe one other aspect that's interesting is like selling a kilowatt hour can be difficult. Kilowatt hour itself doesn't have much value, and in a market like the DRC, the grid costs are very low, even if grid is unreliable. Where it is available in Kinshasa and Lubumbashi and in certain other places, it's being sold at 8 to 10 cents a kilowatt hour, which is relatively good value for the operators. And so when you talk to users in terms of kilowatt hours, they often have this price in mind. Even if they're generating with diesel, for some reason, people who generate with diesel think in terms of diesel liters, not in terms of kilowatt hours. And so selling a kilowatt hour is a challenge. And so actually, and the other challenge for a market with the DRC is if you're selling kilowatt hours, your utility. So for us, we're not selling kilowatt hours, we're selling again these bundled services, which avoid us competing directly with the utility. It avoids us talking about kilowatt hour costs. And also, oftentimes people might value lighting or security or water more highly than the kilowatt hour, even if you need that kilowatt hour to provide. So also that bundled service allows you to capture more value and change kind of the framework of discussion with clients.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for that. We've really enjoyed your presentation and the work that you're doing in DRC. In the interest of time, we will not take any questions from the audience, but we'll kindly ask you to write your questions on the chat, and then Arnold will try and respond to you through the chat. So thank you so much, Arnold. And now we'll go to our next speaker. Our next speaker is from SolarRiskit. He is the CEO and founder of SolarRiskit, and he is none other than Dr. Faisal Ghani. So SolarRiskit is a Scottish clean tech company, which is on a mission to provide affordable clean energy to both developing and industrialized economies. So he is a chartered mechanical engineer with over 15 years of experience in developing solar technology. And Faisal is passionate about clean energy and doing whatever it takes to make it accessible to everyone. So SolarRiskit has developed a new low-cost, flat, packable solar thermal collector that Faisal is going to tell us more about, and it converts sunlight into hot water to meet the needs of the household and businesses. So Faisal is a chartered mechanical engineer and is currently an enterprise fellow of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. You're most welcome, Faisal, and thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the introduction. Thanks very much for having me today. It's great to be part of the session. So as mentioned, I'm Faisal. I'm the founder of Solaris Kit. We're a clean tech company based in Dundee, Scotland. And we are trying to essentially decarbonize heat globally. As Catherine mentioned, I'm a mechanical engineer by background, so I'm deeply focused on heat. And what really motivates me is the fact that around half the world's energy is currently consumed to meet heating demand. That's still largely met using fossil fuels, but at the same time, over 70% of Earth's population live in very sunny, warm parts of the planet, i.e. Africa. But at the moment, less than 1% of global heating demand is met using solar energy. In the global south, there's still a very strong dependence on using traditional biomass to meet heating demand. That comes primarily from either charcoal or wood, and for those who are fortunate enough to afford it, electricity and gas, but that's definitely the minority. Because there's so much sunlight available in Africa, what we really want to do at Solaris Kit is unlock the potential of solar energy because this is vastly untapped. The reason why solar thermal technology, so that's where sunlight is converted directly into heat, is so untapped in Africa is that traditional solar collectors available. So these are things like the flat plate evacuated tube solar collectors, which are primarily imported from regions like China or Europe. They've been developed for more industrialized and wealthy economies. And so while these solutions work really well, they are basically over-engineered for a very sunny, warm climate like Africa. They're very expensive to install. They're quite bulky and difficult to transport. And they also are quite prone to reaching very dangerous temperatures if you put them into such a sunny, warm climate like Africa. And so what we wanted to do at Solaris Kit is really try to address a lot of these barriers that have prevented the wide-scale adoption of solar thermal. And as I mentioned, to try and reduce that dependence on charcoal, wood, gas, and electricity for households, businesses, but also low-temperature industrial process heat applications like fish farms, for example. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So the photo that you can see there, that's actually a photo of one of our earlier prototypes that we had developed. It's a prismatic shaped solar collector. So the way it works is very simple. Basically, sunlight gets absorbed by the absorber coil, which you can loosely see within the prism. When it's in sunlight, that coil just becomes very, very hot, and the prism acts as a very effective heat trap to minimize those heat losses. So we like to say even in Scotland, which isn't the sunniest of places, we can get that coil up to 75 degrees Celsius. And the idea is very simple. We transfer fluid through that coil, and that could be just water. And that water then just gets heated by sunlight, where it can then be used by households for bathing, cleaning, and as I mentioned, industrial processes as well. But what's very unique about our solar collector is that we've developed it as a flat packable or self-assembled product. So you can think of it as the IKEA solution to solar water. You basically buy a box which weighs about 10 kilograms. It's very easy for a single person to move. It can be even be transported by bicycle or the back of a motorcycle. And once it's assembled, it'll convert sunlight directly into heat. So we're just trying to focus on developing a really simple solution that's very, very practical for the African context. Like I mentioned, it's very easy to transport, but another key advantage of our solar collector is that it can be locally manufactured. And that's the model which we are trying to move towards. And I think because of COVID as well, and all the disruption that we've seen with supply chain, transportation costs going through the roof, we've had to really accelerate the move to that business model, is to look into local manufacturing and a license model to start producing our solar collectors locally in country. So that's been definitely probably our biggest challenge, I would say, as a business, because we are a manufacturing company. We've just seen prices for glass, aluminium just go through the roof, and of course transportation and shipping has just been a bit of a nightmare as well. So we were very fortunate that we received funding from Innovate UK to do a pilot project, which we carried out in Rwanda. We only finally made our way to Rwanda just a few weeks ago. We went over there in January, installed a total of 5 systems for 5 households in Kigali. The pilot project went incredibly well. It exceeded all our expectations. We found that the collectors were producing hot water up to 67 degrees Celsius, so more than enough for household applications, while hot enough for killing bacteria like Legionella, but still staying below temperatures which were unsafe, especially because we've developed our solution to be compatible with plastic piping. At the moment, we are looking at just monitoring these systems because they have only just been recently installed, but we're already in discussion with how we can start manufacturing our soil collectors in Africa, and so trying to secure some local investment to fund that. But I just wanted to keep it really quick and short. I'm very happy to take questions at the end of the session. Hopefully that's okay, Catherine.
Yes, that's okay. Thank you so much, Faisal, for that overview. It's definitely quite an innovative technology. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And
Pleasure.
I will not, we only have like 4 minutes left, so we will skip any questions from me to you, but encourage the audience to have any questions they have for you to chat that, to write that up in the chat, and you can respond to that, because I would like us to hear from Robert. I think he's back with us. He hadn't finished his session. We can give him the last 2 minutes to finish. Robert, welcome back. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, now we can hear you okay.
Yeah, great.
I think you're
what I will do is, I think I'll
yes.
I will just jump to some of the key questions I think that have come up, because there's a lot of synergy with the work
Yes.
we've been doing with some of your earlier speakers. I mean, we have a
Yes.
solar thermal unit as part of our innovation in 3S technology, which has got an innovative new IP with it. Because we discovered that about 60% of energy costs in Botswana was spent heating water, which is absolutely crazy when we've got beautiful suns 320 days a year. But I think the key successes for us is that we went straight into the issue of, well, how do we scale and how do we finance our product? Because I think that underpins most of the work we've heard today. It's actually how do you raise finance? And there are 2 things I think we've done. Is one of them that we've actually got EPC status with 2 major banks now, which means basically they will lend to obviously bankable customers. I'm not talking about the bottom of the pyramid, but bankable customers. They will lend against our technology because we've been through rigorous due diligence with the banks. So they will now securitize loans, which means that we now can do business to customer and also provide loans, which will obviously stimulate the market. We also have a program which we're piloting with the government called a rooftop solar program, and net metering, which is proving hugely successful. It's basically turning consumers of electricity into prosumers through our systems. So we put solar thermal, solar PV on the roof with a smart meter, and the meter decides where that power goes. Does the consumer use it? Does it go into their storage unit? Does it heat their water heater? Or does it go into the grid? So that is obviously an intervention that has a significant impact, I would say, and we need to roll out more of those in Africa to see if we're going to deliver SDG 7. And then the third thing is we didn't just deal with the generation technology. We looked at the fintech platforms to enable us to inbound customers to make them bankable, and that's quite critical because one of the things that we found is that to bring serious investment, which we're looking for at the moment, we need to be able to bank customers. We need to be able to show the investor how they're going to get their money back. And the technology is great. They understand that to some degree, but at the end of the day, they want to understand the business models. And that's absolutely crucial to the work that we've been doing. I also would like to say that we have a manufacturing license here in Botswana for the solar thermal bit. And I'd love to talk to Solar Chris about potential linkages there, because we will be manufacturing our technology. I think that's quite important that we create jobs and there's real impact here on the ground. Happy to take some questions.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for those few remarks and the explanation, especially on the funding model, which I think is of interest to many of the listeners that we are having. So now we can only take one more question. Anyone with a question for Faisal or Robert? We have I'm looking at the chat. Anyone with any questions from Faisal or Robert? Okay, I think you are all loud and clear, and they got the tips that you had and the innovations that you are sharing on. So so already 4:30 on the dot. So I think we are going to conclude this session. And first, I wanted to thank Carbon Trust for supporting this session. Thank you so much to Ian and also to Teresa, who's working in the background. They've also shared their website details, and I encourage all the listeners that we had today, you can visit their website to learn more about them. I also want to thank our speakers for the day. They have shared with us the wonderful innovations that they're working on, the approaches and the business models, and also some of the challenges that they're experiencing in terms of scaling. We've heard of the technologies to address heating and also some of the energy gaps in DRC for the productive use. We've also heard of from Catherine on reducing the carbon print in the fashion industry, both from the producer side and also from the industry side. So thank you so much from us as the organizers of this event. Thank you so much. And then I'd also like to thank the Power for All team. We had the Power for All team that has been working in the background. We have Alessandra, and we also have Brenda and Suranjana, who had supported us to put this together. And then I'll also thank the audience. Thank you so much. You've been very interactive. We've appreciated all your questions and comments on the chat. And then also last but not least, we'd like to thank the SunCalp team led by Prachi and George and everyone else who supported us, and all the people who are behind the scene, the technical people who we haven't seen. Thank you so much. So we've come to the end of this session. We didn't have as much time to interact with the audience as we would have wanted, but we've really appreciated, and I think you'll be able to reach out to any of the panelists that we had in case you need any more clarification or any more interactions. So thank you so much, everyone, and wherever you are, have a good night, good evening, and good day. Thank you so much. Bye.